That's the housekeeping. It's now time to get on with our agenda, and what better way to kick it off than an annual address from the AUSCERT General Manager. Please welcome Ivano Bongiovanni to the stage. Ivano, it's all yours.
Three weeks ago, a bright flash lit up a dark room. And what we saw in that flash, for just a moment, before anyone could look away, was not what we expected. We expected to see a war being fought, defenders holding the line, tools working, investments paying off. What we actually saw was another company that had been breached. It negotiated with its attackers, reached an agreement, and called it a resolution. And half the security leaders in the world surveyed this month said that they would have done the same. I'm not here to judge that decision. I am here to ask what it means. Because to me, that moment was a signal that something has shifted, that somewhere, quietly, the industry has started to accept what it has been reluctantly saying out loud. Winning in this game is harder than most would expect. Welcome to AUSCERT 2026. 25 years of this conference, 25 years of this community gathering to share knowledge, sharpen tools, and face the threat landscape together. I have a personal reason to pause at that number, 25. 25 years ago, I was sorting out the paperwork to join the police ranks. Security for me meant something entirely physical: presence, patrol, protection. The idea that I would one day be standing here, opening a conference like this, was not something I could have imagined. And yet, here we are. This industry has traveled an extraordinary distance in 25 years. The expertise in this room, the dedication, the genuine commitment to protecting organizations and the people who depend on them, it is real and it matters. What this community has built is remarkable, which is exactly why I want to spend the next 15 minutes or so saying something uncomfortable. The theme this year for our conference is Game On. I love that theme. It's energizing, it captures something true about what we do, the pace, the stakes, the adversarial nature of this profession we all love. But this morning I want to ask a different question about that very same theme, the game. Not, are we ready to play? We are ready to play. But are we playing the right game? Let me take you back to a word, which is the word security. We use it so often, it has become invisible. But words carry histories. And this one carries an assumption so deeply embedded that we stopped noticing it. Security comes from Latin secare, which means to cut and to separate. The idea encoded in the word itself is one of division. An asset on one side, a threat on the other. A boundary between them. Security, at its etymological root, is the act of maintaining that separation. For most of human history, that was a reasonable model. Walls worked, perimeters held. You kept what was valuable inside and what was dangerous outside. And when we built the first digital security systems, we carried that model with us. Firewalls, well, the name itself is architectural, is physical. Perimeter defense, DMZs, network segmentation, zero trust, which despite its name is still fundamentally about controlling who crosses which boundary. Every tool we have built, every framework we have designed, every budget we have justified carries the ghost of secare inside it. The assumption that safety comes from separation, that if we can just draw the right line, in the right place, we can keep what matters on the right side of it. But look around you. Look at the environment we are all operating in. There is no inside and outside anymore. There is no boundaries that holds. The separation that Secare imagined, the cut that security promised, cannot be made in a world of interconnected systems, distributed data, supply chains that stretch across dozens of third parties, and attacks that move faster than any human response can. And yet, our tools are built around it. Our frameworks assume it. Our budgets justify it. Our entire professional language encodes the concept of Secare, security. We have spent 30 years trying to maintain a separation that the modern world has made structurally impossible. And we have called our failure to maintain it a lack of investment. This is not a resourcing problem. It is not a technology problem. It is a conceptual problem. And unfortunately, there is no amount of budget that will solve a conceptual problem. Here's the thing I keep coming back to recently. Every year, the budgets have grown. Every year, the tools have multiplied. The average enterprise now runs more than 50, 60 security tools. Billions are spent annually on firewalls, detection, intelligence, response. I'm not saying we don't need those. But every year, the breaches have gotten worse. I'm not saying the people in this room haven't worked hard enough. You work hard enough on a daily basis. We all work hard enough. I'm not saying the tools don't work. I'm saying something more uncomfortable than that. I'm saying that the model is broken. Not because we failed it, because the world has changed around it, and we haven't really changed at the right pace. The Canvas breach 3 weeks ago did not shock me, and I'm sure it didn't shock most of you. What stayed with me was the reaction, the anger, the debate about whether the payment was right or wrong, the arguments about the precedent that it would set, about the ethics associated with it, about what message it sends. All of that anger and discussion is absolutely legitimate. But all of it is aimed at the wrong target. Because the real question, I believe, isn't whether the payment was the right decision. The real question is why the situation existed in the first place in which payment felt like the least bad option. That question points somewhere we're not entirely looking at, in my humble opinion. It points at the architecture, at the design, at the accumulated set of decisions over the years made long before any attacker arrived. And all of that determined how much damage was possible once they got in. The breach did not create the fragility. The breach revealed the fragility. So let me switch gears for a second. I want to offer a different way of thinking about all of this. What if the question we've been asking, how do we stop attackers, is the wrong question? Not because the answer doesn't matter. The answer does matter, believe me. But because it is fundamentally unanswerable. And organizing an entire industry around an unanswerable question produces an industry that, like ours, is permanently in crisis, permanently measuring itself against a standard that it can barely meet. What if the right question is another one? How do we build organizations where it doesn't matter if attackers succeed? Not only how do we make attacks less likely, not only how do we detect them faster, not only how do we respond better. How do we build organizations where the attacker gets in and nothing consequential really happens? Let me make that concrete. Imagine two organizations, right? Same size, same industry, same Tuesday night. A credential stolen weeks ago is used to log into a cloud environment. In the first organization, the attacker spent some hours moving laterally across the different systems. They find years of client data, contracts, personal records, billing information, you name it, all stored in full, all accessible from a single compromised account. They exfiltrate everything, then they encrypt it. And the organization discovers the breach 2 days later, in the best case scenario, when a client calls and says their data is being sold on the dark web. What follows, obviously, as you know, it's a pretty tough time. It consumes, 3 months. External forensics at emergency rates, obviously. regulatory notifications across multiple jurisdictions, enterprise clients requesting evidence of remediation before they will renew. And an insurer may be disputing the coverage, a leadership team that is being stressed and is spending half of their time on the breach response rather than running the business. The second organization, same circumstances, but different result. Same attacker, same credential stolen. The credential expired 4 hours before it was used, by design, automatically. The login attempt fails. There is nothing else to say about this breach. It did not become a real event. Extend the scenario now for a second. Assume that, okay, the attacker finds another way in. They get access. What they find is data that is only there for as long as it was needed, and no longer. Systems architected that one compromised element cannot cascade into another. A leadership team that has rehearsed this very moment a number of times, and their response was drafted months ago. And the regulators themselves are not really surprised by what's happening. So the attacker got in, nothing consequential has happened in organization number 2. These are not two different levels of security investment. These are two different design philosophies. One organization was built for normal. The other one was built for breach. Because here's what I would like to say in closing, and something that I've come to believe after so many years working in security. The damage from a breach is not caused by the attacker getting in. It's caused by what they find when they get there, what they can do with it, and how unprepared the organization is for the moment. The breach is an event. The consequences are a design choice. I started calling this way of thinking post-security. I'm going to leave that there. What I leave there is the foundation that is underneath the concept of post-security, because I think it is the most underexplored idea in this industry, and it has been hiding in plain sight somehow. The future of cybersecurity is data governance. The future of cybersecurity, in my opinion, is data governance. I know it doesn't sound like really a paradigm shift. It sounds like more a compliance requirement, but bear with me for a second. Most organizations have never truly known their own data. We know it. That's what happens in our organizations. An organization that truly knows its data, what it holds, why it exists, where it lives, who can access it, when it should cease to exist, is an organization that has structurally limited what an attacker can do with a successful breach. Minimized data yields nothing when stolen. Governed data has natural boundaries that constrain lateral movement. Intentional retention means regulators get clear answers instead of years of investigation. But here's what makes this argument much larger than security. That's why I call it post-security. The organization that gets data governance right doesn't just reduce its breach consequences. It runs more efficiently because data chaos is also operational chaos. It knows its customers better because governed data is usable data, not a swamp of duplicates and inconsistencies. It builds the foundations that makes AI actually work, because we know every AI initiative that has stalled in the last years has stalled on the same problem. The data underneath is ungovernable. So data governance is not just a security investment. It is a business investment that makes you breach irrelevant as a consequence. This is the conversation I think this industry needs to have a bit more, and I don't think we have entirely fleshed what this really means. For 30 years, we have gone to boards and CFOs with the same argument. Invest in security to avoid something bad happening. You will admit that this is a fundamentally negative value proposition. You're always spending money to prevent a loss, never to create a real gain. What if we went to those CFOs with a different argument entirely? Investing knowing your data, and you will run a better organization. Serve your customers more intelligently, adopt AI and agents more effectively, and arrive at breach irrelevance as a consequence. So the fundamental question again is not so much how do we stop the threat, but how do we build something so well designed that the threat becomes irrelevant? 25 years ago, when I was filling my police application forms, I had no idea of any of these coming. Nobody could have predicted what this industry would become. The scale of it, the sophistication, the genuine talent gathered in rooms like this one. And nobody could have predicted the scale of what we'd be up against either. The knowledge that the AUSCERT community shares and other communities like AUSCERT makes everyone stronger. That has always been true. It has never been more true than today, I believe. But I think the knowledge we most need to share right now is not about better tools, faster detection, smarter response. It is about a different question entirely. We have spent 30 years trying to cut threats away from assets to honor the Latin root embedded in the word security itself. I think it was not the appropriate image. Assets and threats are not separable in the modern world. What is separable is the consequence from the event. That is a separation I think is worth designing for. So the game is on. Yes, I agree. I just think it might be time to change which game we're playing. Breaches are inevitable. Consequences should not be. Thank you very much, and welcome to AUSCERT 2026.